Right, I'm hoping I've got Lee and Patrick here. Hi, guys, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Hi, Patrick, are you there? Oh, no, we haven't got Patrick. I'm going to try and add Patrick back onto this call. How you doing, Lee?
Yes, I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. The phone's going to ring now, so I'm going to add Patrick Henningsen in from InfoWars. But for the people who aren't aware of you and what's been going on, could you give the listeners a little bit about your background, please?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm a filmmaker. I'm an investigative journalist. Obviously, I'm using a pseudonym for what I'm doing now. And I've been basically working as a freelance investigative journalist. So, I worked on the Cook Report for a little time. I've worked with other people, other journalists, and doing stories and what have you. We did Cash for Questions, which was a big story back in the 90s about lobbying and big government and all that kind of thing, and bribery and corruption. So I'm very much into that kind of thing, and I decided to go undercover at G4S in their run-up to the Olympics to see what their training program was going to be like and see what it was like working for them. Because I'd heard some horror stories, and you've got to check these things out for yourself. You can't just take other people's word for it.
No.
So I signed up and became a security officer with G4S.
Right, fantastic. Patrick, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Lee, can you hear Patrick?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Brilliant.
Hi, Patrick.
Hello, Lee.
Right, I'm just getting Lee just to give a little bit about his background. I want to start before you jump in, Patrick, about talking about how he got the job and what he's been doing on the training, and then it will be over to you, Patrick. I know you've got quite a few questions you want to ask Lee yourself.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So Lee, how long have you been working now for G4S?
I think it's basically I did the training since April. I've only officially had one paycheck, which is a training paycheck. I think for £45. So that's all I've had so far. I haven't officially started. I haven't officially signed a contract with them or anything. They haven't checked my references of my application, my personal references or my work references. So so officially, I suppose, I've just finished the training and I'm just about to start with G4S, really. But as yet, they're so bad with their paperwork and what have you that I haven't signed a contract. I think I have to. I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Right, okay. So you went for your interview. I know we've had a chat the last couple of days, but you went for your interview, and how did the interview pan out, and what was involved with regards to the interview, Lee?
Okay, well, the interview was really quite silly in a way, because I sat down with this very nice woman, very professional, and she basically had 3 cups, which were, one was lemonade, one was orange juice, and one was nothing. And she said, can you tell the difference by smelling them? And so I said that. I said, that's orange juice, that's lemonade, and that's nothing. It's very good. And that was kind of it. And then they did another one where it was kind of numbers, where they showed you like a 1, a 3, and then a squiggle. And if you said the squiggle was a number, obviously you'd fail, but you'd say, actually, that's 1, that's 3, and that's a squiggle. So, and that was it, really. That was the test. That's all I had to do. They gave me a sight test. And basically, I was off. That was my interview process done.
And I know, again, yesterday we were talking, but we said about the Criminal Records Bureau's checks that most people have to undertake. Even just if you want to go and drive a taxi, you have to have a Criminal Records Bureau check.
Yeah.
Did you get a check done? Did you get the paperwork to fill in?
I don't think so. I think I'd remember. I have an SIA license, so I have a criminal records check done for that. But the thing is, that was, 3 years ago, when I first got it for an assignment that I was working on about door supervisors.
Right.
So, really, I could have committed a crime in between, because I haven't renewed the license as yet. It's coming up if I need to renew it. So they haven't sent me the paperwork. I haven't done a criminal records check that I can remember, and I'm sure I would have, it's all a bit sort of out there. One of the reasons why I'm so sort of hurried this morning is because I've been being bullied by Channel 4 at the moment to retract what I've said about one of their correspondents. So I'm a little bit on edge.
Yeah, of course you are. I totally understand. Well, I'll kind of whiz my questions through just to give people who haven't heard of you before, Lee. I just want to give them a little bit of an insight on how you got this job. So then you went on a training course, which was conducted by another private firm.
Yeah, it's called Contemporary International.
Okay.
Again, they're a private company. They're an events management company, I think, as far as I can tell. And again, they have all ex-soldiers, training you. And the training consisted of PowerPoint presentations that were very, very basic. And when I say basic, I mean one of the things that sticks in my mind was that one of the PowerPoints was, what does the security officer do the night before his shift? And, the answer is, I have something to eat, go to bed early, iron your uniform. I mean, that's how... And then we sat through that for basically, I did 2 days, I had a break, and then they emailed me back, I think, a month later, or maybe a little bit longer, about 6 weeks, maybe. And I had another 2 days. So 4 days of training, 3 days of PowerPoint presentations, and 1 day was basically, half a day of an assessment, which was ridiculous. I mean, I purposefully searched someone wrong, and the guy said, yeah, that's fine, that's good. I saw them, one guy who couldn't speak English, who didn't really know what he was doing, trying to search a bag. He just stood there holding the bag, and the trainer said, it's all right, mate, I know what you mean. And I said, well, I don't know what he means. Can you explain it?
Yeah.
He's supposed to be a security officer, and he was like, the trainer was just like, don't talk about it, forget it. None of your business kind of thing,
So now about the metal detector scanners things, people are going to be having to go. I mean, there's thousands upon thousands of people due to go through those gates on the opening day and for all the events for the next fortnight. What can you tell us about the scanners?
Well, the scanners are cheap. They're rapid scan metal detectors. And I think, half the problem with G4S is that they've got so many people to get through. It's just about numbers for them, just training at the numbers, right? And so they've gone cheap on everything, really. They've gone cheap on security officers, and they've gone cheap on equipment. This rapid scan metal detector, I was asked to take a knife through it. The knife was in my back pocket. I walked through the metal detector, and it didn't go off. So the trainer said, did it go off? And I said, no, it didn't. He goes, okay, have some keys. So I had some keys. And I went through the metal detectors, and I think, and he said, to go, I said, no. So he said, here's an iPhone, right? So I went through with his phone, because I don't have a mobile phone, and then the metal detector went off. So you can imagine how much metal you actually have to have on you for these things to work. And, these are supposed to be metal detectors. Their basic function is to detect metal. The one metal detector outside of Heaven nightclub in London is much better than the ones they've got for the Olympics. I'm not saying this to pick on G4S or anything like that. It is a fact that these metal detectors aren't up to scratch. They said to us, when I said, look, how many people have we got to search? They said, don't worry about searching people, because in peak times we're going to have the metal detectors off anyway, so they won't go off. So we've got to get 350 people through an hour. That's what they told us.
So you also mentioned that the people doing the training made some comment about the police not having any power over the G4S.
Yeah, they're quite blatant about that. They're like, well, the police have got nothing to do. They're going to be bored, the police, one of the comments was, we've got more power than the police, right? That's basically what they think, Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. This is what they think. This is what they said. They were also saying, they were bigging their operation up, of course. But they're also saying about these, casket lining things, and I said, well, what's a casket lining?
Yeah, how many casket, and has anybody actually seen these casket linings, Lee?
I don't know. I'm just going on what the guy said. I don't know whether they're stored in a warehouse somewhere, whether they're stored in, a shipyard, wherever. I haven't seen them personally. I'm just reporting basically what he said, and he said there were 200,000 of them. And half of me thinks, that's probably quite sensible, because if a major terrorist attack happened, at the Olympics, there's 80,000 people, in there anyway, and then people in the Olympic Park. This could all just be very precautionary.
Yeah.
Then the other half of me says, what are you planning? Why do we need those? You know.
Yeah.
If they said we've got 200,000 paramedics, I'd have been like, okay, that's fine.
There was also comments about foreign troops being drawn in, not as well as I can't. Is it 30,000 British troops have been brought in?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, everybody, I think, basically. All leave has been cancelled, as far as I can tell, from what my sources say. An army major, who's a doctor at Woolwich Barracks, basically, this was back in, you know, so before I started, this was back in sort of February, maybe, March, said to me, you know, he was concerned that, you know, there was 100,000 troops coming through Woolwich, and I said, why? And he said, you know, there were German, there were American troops all for the Olympics, and they were going to be stationed in and around bases around London. And this was 100,000 people, and he seemed to think it was kind of UN troops, you know. But I mean, he couldn't be specific in that, but he has to give them a medical, and then they get, you know, assigned to wherever base they then move on to. But they're being chinooked in, helicopters in, under the cover of darkness. There's 2 Chinook flights per night going over Greenwich. A friend of mine told me this, and you know, he said they're coming in by Chinook as well. This army major. So I went to Greenwich, and sure enough, they're coming in by Chinook, you know, after midnight, which to me is quite sinister, you know, quite frankly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, going to the uniforms, you haven't got your uniforms yet, have you?
No, and I'm on a different rotation to some of the. Some people have got them, some people haven't. One of the problems with the uniform is that they kept coming in and saying that only people can pick up a uniform who have an email from us, which is obviously sensible. We get an email for everything. So, but they've had uniforms going missing. So people have been kind of going up to the uniform dispatch area and saying, "Hi, I'm here for a uniform," not having the email, I forgot it, or whatever they say, and they get given a uniform. And that's been happening. And we know that terrorists, you know, get uniforms for security officers, you know. Once you've got a uniform, you know, okay, you may not get through the first PSA, but you could get around the PSA. If it's busy, you know, you're a security officer. You know, who's really going to question you that much, you know?
And there's also no facilities for when you finish your shift for you to get changed out of your uniform. Is that correct?
They were very specific in this, right? Is that you have to wear your uniform from work, from the Olympic Stadium, back home. That means you have to travel through Stratford, you have to get on the tube, travel on the tube. Everyone's going to know that you're a security officer. We're wearing green. You know, it's quite a nice uniform, actually, as uniforms go. So, you know, it's got security officer and it's got the Olympic logos, all that kind of 2012 stuff. I think it's got the mascots on it as well, I'm not sure. And so, yeah, everyone's going to know you're a security officer. We know that terrorists will follow you from where you work back home. That puts your family in jeopardy. That means that a terrorist, in effect, could hold your family hostage whilst you're made to do something nefarious at the stadium, like let someone in or not search someone who comes through your PSA, you know, something like that maybe. But it leaves us open to that. They don't even give us a cagoule or something just to put over it, you know, to cover it. The police don't wear their uniforms home. They may wear their trousers and their shoes and their white shirt, but they put a jacket on over it. The army certainly don't do it for those exact same reasons, because that's what the IRA did. They'd follow people from barracks to the pubs and then blow the pubs up, you know.
It's just shocking. And just finally, before I bring Patrick in, you said that you haven't even had basic health and safety training.
No, there's no health and safety training. There's no. You would think that you would have a emergency first response medical course. There's no first aid whatsoever. So if you're and these queues are going to be massive in the Olympic Park. People are going to be waiting for hours. People that have heat stroke, they might even have heart attacks. You know, if you collapse and there's a G4S security officer in front of you, all he's going to be able to do is look at you. Maybe call his team leader over so they can both look at you. I mean, you know, they don't even have first aid. If you collapse at the Olympic Park, you've got to hope that a paramedic is right there. You know, if you've got to wait 10 minutes while the paramedics come, well, you know, that's seriously life-threatening stuff. Whereas if you had a first responder medical course, a first aid course, then at least the security officer would be able to help, support. I mean, they might go pick up somebody and, you know, damage them even more by picking them up. They may do the wrong thing because they haven't been trained. I mean, this is, to me, would be obvious. And Lowcock, who designed the course, didn't seem to think that a first aid course was relevant to being a security officer. It's ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, after bring Patrick in now, but I do want to come back before we close, just to talk about Channel 4 and the mainstream and the correspondence you've had over the last 24 hours with them. But I'd like to. The reason I've got Patrick on is he works for Alex Jones at InfoWars. He's got a website, 21st Century Wire. He's been he was at the Financial Terrorism Tour with us, but he was also interviewed Tony Farrell, who's the ex-South Yorkshire police analyst who exposed 7/7 and questioned 9/11 and 7/7, and was sacked from his job. So Patrick, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi.
Yeah.
Well, I know you wanted to ask Lee a few questions, so it's over to you.
Well, they're not so much questions, but I think we can definitely have a discussion and look at a lot of different angles, because I think the information that Lee's brought forward from his experiences is quite revealing, and on the initial level, it gives the public a little view into this security industry complex that really is kind of grown in scope and scale in the last 10 years in this country, in Europe, and really in North America, but especially in Europe and the UK. I've got some experience with having to hire people with SIA qualifications in the past in the event management industry, and with the things that Lee is telling me right now, I'm just kind of laughing under my breath, because it all sounds all too familiar if you've ever dealt with private security companies like this.
Yeah.
I've seen the training manuals for Securicore, back in the 90s, and in the SIA, just to get a license in this country, you really need two things. To get a license in this country, if you want a career as a security guard, you need to have a pulse, okay? There needs to be some heart activity going on.
Yeah.
And the second thing is you just need to show up.
Yeah.
Those are the two biggest qualifications. I was going to ask Lee. Lee, how much are they offering? Is it a day rate, or are they paying you a weekly rate, or what?
It's by hour. They didn't tell us. I had to. It's buried on their website, and apparently it's £8.50 an hour.
Yeah, that's about right. And really, what they're doing is they're drawing out of the target population. And this is nothing new for security. They're drawing out of the target population people that really couldn't get a job anywhere else, and the TSA in America uses more or less the same hiring principles, and the training's not all that different from what Lee's telling you, although it might be a little more detailed.
Yeah.
There's not a lot expected from these employees. Now, what I'm aside from the cowboy security practices, I mean that test, Lee, is hilarious. That you said they put two numbers in a squiggly line. That reminds me of, when you watch CDUK or some of these teenage programs where they have a quiz question to win some prize or some ticket to some concert. They say, which one of these three cities is in the U.S., Timbuktu, Moscow, or New York City? Everybody wins. It's fantastic. My conversation with Tony Farrell, very credible guy. This is the ranking intelligence analyst in one of the biggest police forces in the UK, and he showed me his threat assessment matrix, which was many pages long, regarding 7/7. And my concern when we talk about security and we talk about big events like the Olympics, the whole idea in this country, and we're all victims of this to some degree. We've been conditioned to believe that the number one threat of terrorism is from domestic Muslim extremists or nefarious Muslims who sneak into the country to wreak havoc with bombs. And what Tony Farrell's threat assessment, and the threat assessment or risk assessment is what all policy is based on. He found the threat to be false, at least in the case of 7/7. So all the policies that have been lopped on, and also as a public, our idea of danger or where danger is coming from is in some ways skewed towards an inaccurate threat assessment. So I'm like always questioning this idea that there's Muslims and Bin Laden characters hiding in every corner, hiding under our bed, wanting to kill us because they hate us for our freedoms. That's an idea that's been placed in the minds of millions of people after 9/11. And so I believe there's a absolute history of false flag events that are staged by governments. This goes back hundreds of years. It's a tried and tested tactic. The big ones I can mention are Gleiwitz in Poland, where Germany shot a couple of Polish army officers, put German uniforms on them, and the pictures ran in the major newspapers in Berlin at the time, and that got the public behind the invasion of Poland. Then we have the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and there's quite a few others. There's Operation Ajax in Iran, where they overthrew Mohammad Mossadegh and blamed it on government people. Syria, they're doing this in Syria right now. They're transporting dead bodies onto sites in places like Hamra and Homs, and say that Assad slaughtered his own people. And this, obviously, all these things are used as pretexts to get the public behind some kind of intervention, whether it be humanitarian. This thing with the Olympics really concerns me, and not just Lee's findings in his investigations, which should be shocking to anybody who's putting their trust in private security firms to do the job, and these are unaccountable companies. This is like when you get on your train. If you have a problem with Virgin Rail, or look, the Paddington Ladbroke Grove train disaster, there's not one penny that's been paid out in compensation, because when you go to court against a private company, you have 50 lawyers sitting across from you, and it's just you and your lawyer. That's the difference between a public and a private company, and when you have to have a really important complaint or something like this, you could phone your MP if it's a police problem. You can't phone your MP if it's a private company. So this is the new culture that we live in, where they privatize essential services. I'm not advocating massive socialism. I'm not a socialist or not a capitalist. I'm just saying that there's certain things that have a chain of accountability right back to your local elected representative.
The police swear an oath, don't they? Before they go out on the street, they have to stand up and make an oath. I mean, by the looks of things, G4S will just employ anyone at the moment. Is that right, Lee?
Oh, yeah, they're taking everybody and anybody. People who don't speak English, people who don't really... One guy didn't even understand where he was, really. He was just told to go there by the job centre. I think what the job centres are doing in Stratford and Hackney are just getting everybody who's been long-term unemployed down to the Olympic Stadium. They can't... I don't think they can threaten their benefits. But they're certainly making it feel that they can, I think, to some of these people. One guy was trying to hook up people with marijuana, was trying to deal marijuana in one of the classes, and approached me. I'd seen him do it to someone else. He approached me then, and then I'd look in his bag, and sure enough, he had a little stash of marijuana, and said, I think he was trying to set people up on day one and come back and do the deals on day two. And I saw him give a bit to somebody as, I think, a little tester. The trainer saw this later on in the day during the class, and he said, "Excuse me, mate, can you wait to the break and do that outside? Not get out of the class and call the police. You're dealing drugs in my class. You know what I mean? None of that. Just keep it in the break." And I think that's, the general sort of lackadaisical thing of G4S, where they're just simply not going to do anything about anything. He's going to employ these people that don't really care where they've come from or what kind of backgrounds they have. And I mean that in a sense that there's some people there who really want to do well. One woman approached me and she said, "Look, this is the Olympics. This is the biggest event I'm ever going to do in my life, and she says, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to cock it up." And I said, "Well, we've got to demand, really, and ask for better training." And the trainers basically their reply was, "Well, this is it, and get on with it,"
And do you say that there are some quite high-ranking military who were ex-military are being given sort of like lesser jobs than somebody who's just come in who's been sent there from the job centre?
This is what outraged me, right? This was like day one, and I had a Gurkha come up to me. And he looked at me and sussed me out, I suppose, and quite quickly came up to me and said, have you been put for being a team leader? And I said, no. And I said, have you? And he went, no, I'm really bothered. I said, because I've got 20 years of, 20 years of, being in the British Army, being a Gurkha. and I'm not a team leader. And I went, And then a policeman, who's an ex-policeman, been a policeman for, however many years they have to do, and then he'd retired and got an FIA license and was basically wanted to do the Olympics. He said the same thing. He'd been a policeman for 20-odd years, and he hadn't been picked to be a team leader. And in one of the classes, they said, who's been picked to be a team leader? And this guy put his hand up, and he said, have you done your FIA license yet? And he went, no. And so I went on the hunt looking for people who got a team leader letter and to see how many of them had their FIA licenses already, had any experience whatsoever, and really none of them did, I found one guy with an FIA license, but he was Polish, and I think he'd served in some sort of, I think he might have been, I didn't have to do national service in Poland or something, I'm not quite sure. But he was, the only person I found really with any experience. And I spoke to a lot of people.
Yeah. There was one other thing you mentioned. That, G4S were told that they'd be in charge of the evacuation of the entire city of London. Is that right?
Well, yeah. There was plans for the evacuation of London, and we were told that by G4S that we would be in charge of dealing with the public. And that's really all that they said, really, which was I found it quite sinister how they said it. It's difficult to kind of, convey. But when you're talking about evacuating, London, 10-odd million people here or something like that, I just started wondering, I think, well, what would make people go, Of course, a huge bomb going off, perhaps a biological weapon or something like that. Then everyone would want to go, survivors. And so, therefore, yes, you probably could evacuate London. It's that kind of thing. Me and a friend were discussing it the other day. What would they mean? How would they get people out? Would you use buses or whatever? But if something disastrous happened, you'd want to leave London immediately. So, dealing with the public would just be helping the public get out of London,
What are your thoughts on that, Patrick?
Well, this is the big. I'm glad we got to this point. I'm glad Lee brought this point up, because this is, to me, a very important conversation to have right now. And if anybody is listening to this program, I recommend that you listen right now, and that you also have this conversation with your family, your friends, and your work colleagues. Let's get the word of mouth, which is the fastest internet on the planet, faster than the web, is the word of mouth. Now, what you said is really importantly, and I'm going to take this into a little segue here. This is a dangerous. This idea of preemptive security. If you know that there have been staged attacks, which I'm aware of through just historical research, when you have staged attacks which are carried out by rogue elements within the intelligence services, rogue elements within the military and law enforcement. This is not everybody who works for the security services is a rogue agent who takes part in these sort of things. These are done by selected people on the highest levels, and everybody else just follows to whatever tune they're whistling on when the event takes place. Now, with regards to a biological or a nuclear attack, if it doesn't even need to be a real biological weapon,
exactly.
As we've seen with the swine flu scare, where I personally witnessed people wearing surgical masks on the underground when the swine flu scare was going around. That's the level of paranoia, because, see, the biological weapon is an invisible one, and it creates a level of paranoia that is it's the best of all scare tactics. And now the nuclear. A nuclear event could also be a false nuclear event, which people could say there's radiation levels at ground zero in Stratford, so that they have to evacuate around a perimeter, around a blast zone. Could be a conventional explosion, but they could say it was a dirty nuke, which would be a very popular one. Now, the thing we have in London, and if there are people. If there are any victims of any event at the Olympics, most likely this would be at the opening or closing ceremonies. I would say the closing ceremonies, because all the top media people will have gotten out of there by that time or whatever. Now, it's very difficult for British people to get tickets to any of these events, and that's something that I've heard from multiple sources, from friends. I've heard this too many times over the last 6 months. Now, the majority of tickets are going to an influx of foreigners coming in as visitors to this country. Now, what's interesting here is, if there was a staged event that was being planned in certain chambers of the security services or the highest ups of the police or the military, they would have maybe, I don't know, there's a possibility as a policy to give the majority to foreigners, because if you look at 9/11, for instance, if there was an event where people died, this would be a revolving memorial of like a festival of death every 4 years. There's an Olympics. Moment of silence for all the victims of London 2012. And also, especially if it was a bio event, there'd be that additional paranoia that survivors, people who traveled back to their home countries, would be carrying some kind of thing. So we have to lock down security in airports to a much higher degree than it is now. And it's already pretty high. Okay. Yeah. So really international travel become a massive privilege and not a right. And this is, I believe, if you look at the growth in the security theater, in the security industry, which the majority of it is theater, it's security theater. Yeah. So, and it's a great business if you're like the person who's manufacturing the Ziploc plastic bags in America is just made out like a bandit. It's almost like they've koshered our international travel terminals, so it's everything's, it needs to be restricted in size. There's a higher profit margin for sale on certain goods that are sold on smaller receptacles. Now, it's a massive cash cow for certain people, okay? But it's absolutely horrible for the economy in general. It stunts business. It's really bad for the airlines. Less people are flying. They're having to raise their prices because they're selling less tickets. Plus, we're in a massive, protracted global recession, which is another, kind of engineered event if we want to get into the Max Kaiser conversation of international finance. But I'm really concerned because all the signs are that this would be the greatest opportunity if you were to stage a terror event. This would be the greatest opportunity to have the maximum impact because of the amount of foreign visitors in London, and this is you're never going to get a better chance than this. And if you do subscribe to the possibility, or the strong possibility, that the bombings of 7/7 were absolutely engineered and orchestrated from the inside, the threat came from within, then you have to be very concerned about the Olympics. Yeah. Okay.
What concerned me is also, you're saying about the bombs not being nuclear, but you've got to remember the stadium's built on an old nuclear waste dump.
That's right.
Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So a small bomb going off underneath could potentially turn into a dirty bomb.
Well, at least in theory it could, and they've already seen that story's already been seeded in the mainstream media. Yeah. John Large, who's a very qualified nuclear and toxic commentator, he reported with and the Guardian interviewed him on this subject. He seems to have a brilliant career CV and a very knowledgeable guy. Now, at 9/11, you had an asbestos problem in 2 outdated World Trade Center buildings, where the estimation to remove that problem would have been in the billions of dollars. No insurance company was going to cover that. Okay, so they knocked down 3 of those buildings in one day, and that whole area has been redeveloped commercially with new property leases. So the Silverstein Group has made a lot of money after 9/11. This is not a theory, this is a fact. Yeah. So they've turned a bad situation into a massive cash cow. And if you look at the site in Stratford, that's why they have a temporary stadium there. That's a Lego stadium. It's built up. It's going to be taken down at some point, but it's also on top of a toxic radioactive waste. Below the stadium, and so this is interesting because if you were to level or quarantine that area, potentially if the area was evacuated for a period of years, you could have a massive commercial redevelopment after it's been cleaned up. And what better way to clean it up than to maybe say get the government to pick up the tab because of the terror event that took place on it, on those very ground. Everything's pointing to me like there's some kind of Larry Silverstein World Trade Center potential of chicanery here on a scale that has never been seen before. And we live in very, very amazing times. Let's not forget, the events of September 11th transformed the psychology of Western culture overnight.
Yeah.
From a threat that is still to be determined. What exactly happened that day? We still don't know. There's never been a real forensic investigation. There's been a lot of good research done to point to possibly other things that happened to that day. I can't say what happened that day, but I do know that it did change society, and it put a security state into play that has never been seen before. When you look at these old World War II movies with Clint Eastwood and Anthony Hopkins, putting on German uniforms and going behind enemy lines, on eagle's wings or whatever, the guns
Eagles
of Navarone.
Yeah.
That's a lot of those stories are based on fact, because Germany had such a massive police state and security state, and so did the Soviet Union, that it got to the point where one hand didn't know what the other was doing. And all you needed was a uniform, speak a bit of German, have some papers on you, and then they would play on the fear that if such and such, who was a higher up, found out that they didn't let them through this particular security checkpoint, that their ass would be on the line.
Yeah.
And that's what we're getting into now. You don't need much to it's so that will again increase the paranoia of the amount of people running around in uniforms that we don't know who the hell they are. That's what we're going towards. We've regressed as a society. We're going backwards. We're going backwards 60 years.
I don't know if you heard earlier, Patrick, I ordered that BBC TV series Spooks Code 9, and I've been watching it, and it's surrounding London 2012. It's based in 2013, but it's the after effects of a nuclear bomb going off at a major sporting event where all the eyes were watching London on the 27th of July between the hours of 12:30 and 12:30 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. And because of the bomb that went off, the whole country was separate. Everyone was evacuated north, and they were all set up like these camps, almost like FEMA camps all over the place, in dodgy areas. If you wanted to get from one part of one area to another, you had to have be microchipped or fingerprinted. And it was just. I was just gobsmacked sitting there last night. And when they came out with the date of the 27th of July, it sent shivers down my spine. I mean, this program was made in 2009. So, I mean, if you can get yourself a copy of that Spooks thing, I mean,
I've seen that one. It's. I mean, where do they come up with these television programs? But
exactly.
They do come up with them, and there's a reason for it. Before 9/11, there was a program called The Lone Gunman.
That's right.
And just about 6 months before the event, and it was about hijacking of jetliners. It was aimed to crash into the World Trade Center, but it wasn't. It was going to be said in the media that it would be Arabs who did it, but in reality, the planes were guided by computer, which they are today. Every time a pilot comes down to the runway on approach, the tower takes over and they let go of the controls.
Yeah.
Okay. So that technology's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
So and what it was of course, in the episode they thwarted it at the last minute and saved the day, but that was an actual plot that almost to the T outlined what happened on 9/11, and that went on national television. I believe it was HBO, about 6 or 7 months before the actual event. So I don't know, call that a coincidence, but it's like that Tom Stoppard play where they flip the coin 30 times and it comes up heads. I mean, what are the odds of that?
Yeah.
I do worry when I see these things on television, and these are big productions. They spend a couple million
Absolutely.
to produce that episode. So in a way, they're kind of like simulations. In a way,
it's like mindscaping. It's like mindscaping as well, isn't it?
I find that. I mean, Lee, do you have any understanding of 7/7, or have you looked into it?
No, I haven't. I know people who have. But no, I personally haven't done that. I was sort of focusing on the Olympics, really, as we were getting there. But what I have done in the past is I've worked with agents from the British Army who were put into the IRA, and there was a joke going around that there was more British agents in the IRA than there's actually Irish in the IRA,
Yeah.
Well, that's important. That's very key. That's very importantly because a lot of the fear before the Muslim terrorist became the number one public enemy, number one, it was the Irish terrorist. And if you think about the bombings, the Birmingham 6 and the Guildford pub bombings, and some of these bombings that could have been easily designed and carried out by British agents in order to heighten the level of fear and to and it worked for people on both sides of the Irish Sea. Okay, that benefited people in the IRA, it benefited the black market, and it benefited the security state in the UK. So that's really important. I believe the IRA, what you're talking about, Lee, with the security services infiltrating the IRA and actually involved in terrorist bombings. I think that's important because that shows people.
They were, definitely, because, again, one of my army contacts, he was in Two-Para, and he was stationed in Northern Ireland, and he said that, you would get a call to say, move away from your checkpoint tonight at a certain time, and then they'd move away from the checkpoint. The IRA would go in, or so-called, do a hit on someone or blow something up, and then, they would say, well, hold on a minute, we were there and we were moved. We were moved, and he got so frustrated, and he knew that it was, agents and what have you.
Yeah, well, they had stand-down orders on the morning of 7/7 because they just happened to be running a terror simulation drill that morning on 7/7 about bombs hitting the exact same underground stations and one bus. What are the odds of that? About 1 pedigillion to 1. That's one grain of sand for every grain on the planet. The World Trade Center bombings in America, we have the same thing where the FBI would recruit the bombers, train the bombers, provide the driver, cook up the bomb. They'd set off the bomb, and then it comes out afterwards that these were all FBI informants. But it came out in the media as a genuine terror event. But still, because we live in a society where once a story breaks, no matter what comes out afterwards as the real story, it just goes immediately into people's minds that was a terror attack and it was genuine. And the retraction or the revelations are, if they're lucky, if they appear in the mainstream media afterwards. And politicians still run with these talking points. It's IRA terrorists or, ravaging the lives of millions of Britons, and it's got to stop, and then the same in America's Muslim terrorists are everywhere, and they're plotting to bring down our buildings and create terror in our country. And in a lot of these cases, it was not true. These were security service operations, and anybody listening who has any doubt as to whether that's possible, I think this is high time that people start waking up to reality. This is not good enough. This is our taxpayer money used to terrorize the public. Essentially, that's what the reality is. And this happens in a lot of countries. Operation Gladio was a joint CIA multi-European security service operation that culminated in the Bologna bombings. Now, I met a guy that wrote a best-selling book about the Bologna bombings and made a film about the Bologna bombings. And he believed, well, as far as I know, that they actually was done by the Red Brigades or by terrorists in Italy, when in fact his history shows, under multiple official admissions, this was a Gladio operation. This is a European security designed to, A, discredit certain extremist groups that were infiltrated, and B, to also control and create political divisions within Europe that allowed certain people to consolidate their power base. Okay, this is not fantasy. This stuff happens. It might not be the kind of stuff that we as hardworking individuals in society can relate with, but in the world of security and the world of intelligence, where gray overlaps gray. It's not even black and white. There's multiple gray areas. There's people that are doing things overlapping. It's absolutely confusing. Unless you work in that business, you cannot really understand the level of the cloudiness of it. It's absolutely unhealthy as far as I'm concerned. And the more power we devolve to these agencies, and the more power we devolve to the security services, the more trouble and the more of these events we're going to have to face as a society.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee, I just want to... I know Tony Gosling asked you, have you gone to the mainstream with regards to this?
Yeah, I did that on the first. And one of the reasons that I kind of did this, because I had a contact at Channel 4, which was Andy Davis, the Home Affairs correspondent. And so I kind of thought, well, hopefully he'll run with this, he'll take it. I emailed him on the 13th of June. He rang me back and basically said, look, there seems to be some sort of like media blackout. There's Channel 4 are not going to be interested, and they're not going to do anything that's going to damage the Olympics. That was basically what he said to me. And I went, oh, okay. Well, what's been interesting is that I haven't, Tony Gosling, really thanks to him that this story has ever got out, because he ran with it, and I appeared on his radio show. We broke the story that way. But yesterday, I got a phone call from Andy Davis, who really was, he had a go at me and pretended that I'd never met him, that I never spoke to him, that he never said those things. And I said, yeah, but Andy, I can prove it, And he basically accused me of being a liar, and he said he wanted me to retract what I had said about him speaking to me, and I wouldn't do it. And I just said, look, you can't rewrite history like that. I'm sorry. You did those things, you said those things. He even sent me an email last night, pretending he hadn't even read my email. He just said, oh, I've just got your email. I said, that's not going to work. I can prove my side of things. Can you prove yours, kind of thing? And he wanted me to say that I was lying. He wanted me to say, obviously, G4S had put pressure on him because I named him in the interview. And now he's putting pressure on me.
So he's putting pressure on you to say you were lying about him, or lying about what you've been exposing?
No, lying about him.
Right, okay.
He didn't care about me exposing G4S. It was because he was involved. But I had spoken to him, and so he wanted me to basically say to everybody, actually, I was lying. I've never spoken to Andy Davis. I never went to him, blah, 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 blah. And that's not true. It's simply not true. And I told him this, and I wouldn't do it. And he was recording the conversation, because you could tell he was acting all kind of supercilious and arrogant, and very much kind of like, I'm recording something. And so, it was really disturbing to me. And basically offered me a deal. He kind of said, look, your story with G4S might have merit. Might have merit, mate. It's gone global.
Yeah.
And so, and he said, look, if you retract your statement, I will sit down with you and talk to you about your story. And I went, no, I'm not going to do that, And really, we had, I was full of adrenaline because I wasn't expecting it. It came out of the blue. It was a Sunday night. He called me at home. If I hadn't spoken to him, how did he have my number? Why did he call me at home? Do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous, what's going on.
Yeah, totally ridiculous. It's
And so he's going to expose me now. Basically, that's what I think is going to happen to G4S. He knows who I am. So he can tell G4S, look, this is the person, this is what they're doing. So now it's gone from being a story about security to a story about a journalist, trying to bully and cajole another journalist into lying. And this is the mainstream media we're talking about. We're not talking about some, I don't know, bullies from down the road. We're talking about people who work for Channel 4 ITN News doing this. And this is outrageous. And luckily, I recorded the conversation last night because he left a message on my answer machine that didn't sound good. So I thought, I'll record this. And I'm glad I did now, because I wouldn't, some of the things he said and how he said them, I wouldn't be able to prove to anybody. They wouldn't believe me,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
The mainstream media, these are the gatekeepers, Lee. These are they're not self-appointed gatekeepers, by the way. You have members of, particularly the BBC will be the best example, but you also have members high up on in editorial and director positions in ITV, Channel 4, all across the mainstream media. In America, we have the same thing in CNN and in Fox, and not so much Fox, funny enough. Although they're foaming at the mouth neoconservative news outlet, Rupert Murdoch had some level of independence, whether you agree with his politics or not. But in this country, we have members of the MI5 who are agents of the MI5 in the sense that they're called in for briefings periodically. That's why we see streamlined talking points immediately in real time across every major news outlet when there's a major event. And the reason that is because these people are briefed by the security services, and some of these people get a second paycheck. In other words, I spoke to, off the record, obviously, one MI5 former officer whose first assignment when he graduated from their training academy was to be put into the Daily Telegraph. And when he got into the Daily Telegraph, his job was whatever his job was there. But he immediately, when he went back to see the files, he saw there was many agents working in that one newspaper who worked for the same security services he did. So they're everywhere, absolutely everywhere, and especially in this country, it's very concentrated.
Well,
That's why the talking points are across. And maybe, I'm not saying that your man at Channel 4 is getting a second paycheck from the security services, but there are people in his organization and many others in this country that are actually that. And that is because there's a controlled conversation that needs to happen. Everybody needs to be on cue. And they talked about this on the BBC Panorama program 1 year before the 7/7 bombings with Peter Power from Visor Consultants, Michael Portillo, all the top guys from the BBC, some police guys, and they said that, yes, we need to control the coverage.
Yep.
After a major event, we must control the coverage. This is their most important job. The media is central when there's with the intelligence services. They create our reality, okay? And people should be under no delusion as to the absolute fact of the matter in this situation. They control our reality. The alternative media is not controlled, okay? There's multiple opinions, there's debate, there's conversation, and we're able to speculate on scenarios that people at Channel 4 will not touch. It's like the plague.
Yeah.
They don't touch
I brought one of theirs, I brought Andy Davis out into the light. I mentioned him only because I'd spoken to him, and he said they wouldn't touch this, and there's like some sort of media blackout. Well, obviously there is a media blackout because Andy Davis is concentrating the story on me rather than on G4S, which is what I'm doing the story on.
Exactly. I phoned the BBC when I went on with the column on Thursday before you and I'd had a chat, and I phoned through and I got through to the BBC News press office, and I said to them about this story, and it was in the public interest. Licence payers' money is going out. We should be reporting proper news. This should be at least picked up and discussed. The girl who answered the phone she made out she didn't know who G4S was. She said she would pass the message on and get someone to call me back. Lo and behold, nobody called me back. But who did call me back was a very flappy person at G4S, and I haven't got his name with me because it's at the column. But he advised me that I should not go on air and be discussing the interview that you did with Tony Gosling, and it would be irresponsible journalism if I went on air. And I told him, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to do that. I'm going on air because it is in a matter of public interest. And he made out there was no truth to your claims and that it was complete rubbish. So I thanked him for his comments. I said I would say that he had commented on that. And that's been it. And then you try and get involved with the contemporary people, and you can't. There's just the only number here to phone in the UK is a mobile number, which is persisted. It's always turned off. So I mean, it's just crazy. And the BBC no interest in reporting this.
No.
Responsible journalism. What a laugh. Honestly, they don't do journalism. Okay, if anybody from Channel 4 is listening, which I hope they are, or anybody from the BBC or any of the mainstream media are listening, you're not doing journalism, okay? If someone like Lee is raising a red flag, and anybody like Lee is raising a red flag, your job really is, if you call yourself a journalist, should be to follow up on that, to follow that thread and see where it leads. Okay, and they're not doing that. There's, like you said, a media blackout. There's a controlled conversation, which makes me believe that there's something afoot. And I hope that if there's anybody in the law enforcement listening, or anybody in the military, or anybody who's a private contractor for security, and if there is a live terror drill anytime around the Olympics, okay, then I will tell you now, if you're taking part in a scheduled live terror drill around the Olympics, that you might be contributing or playing a part in a staged terror event. And I would say, don't show up to work that day, if you want my advice, because you'll have that on your conscience for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I've just had someone, I want to ask you both this. Somebody's just flashed up a Facebook friend and said, does anyone actually know anyone who's been working on the construction of the stadium? He doesn't know. He's in the building industry, and not one person does he know, you know, through his job, who's actually been working on that stadium? Is it mostly like foreigners that have been drafted in to work on that stadium?
Yeah.
Do you know anyone who's been working?
Security as well, quite frankly. You know, there's a lot of foreign people there. You know, and I think this is their modus operandi, isn't it? Really.
That's interesting. And Lee, yesterday when we spoke, you mentioned about the people, the sniffer dogs, and that if there were bombs going to be off, they would have already been placed.
Oh yeah, day one. This is what they said, right? We had one guy in there who was this guy who's a conspiracy theorist down to his toes, and he shouted out, you know, there's probably a bomb built in already, and the trainer turned around and basically said, look, as we build the stadium, or as the stadium was being built, each section was quarantined, i.e., it was, you know, guards were around it. The bomb sniffer dogs would be going over it every day, and then they'd move on to the next section, build the next section, that would be quarantined. And so if there was a bomb in the stadium, they would have had to have built it in at the beginning. And I went, oh, really? And he went, yeah, so if it's there, it's already there. Jeez, this is nuts. You know? What are you telling me here? You know.
Lee, I have to ask you: Did they screen the dogs? Because you know you don't know where these dogs have come from. They could be suicide dogs. You know, undercover with G4S. You know, I don't know. Is there any screening process with the dogs?
I have no idea. I tell you what, though, a story did come out not so long ago. I think it was last weekend that the bomb sniffer dogs were actually drug sniffer dogs. A lot of them. So they're never going to find explosives in anyway, right? And they were ghosting their
that's right.
Routines. You know, they were faking them. And this has come out about G4S, and a couple of people have been sacked, and that's about it. You know.
Yeah.
The only thing they're going to find is a lot of pot, and that's good because G4S staff will be able to
to make a bit of money on the side.
Yeah, but they also said to us, as we were screening people, that, you know, if we find, you know, someone with a small bag of coke, not to worry about it so much, you know. I mean, you know, they're not after that. They're after the guns and the, you know, the T-shirts and the tents and the prohibited beach ball or something. That's really what they're after, you know.
Well, let me tell you a little story about, I met a British man in America who I flew with when I flew over one time, and he collects old guns. Okay, and the only place you can buy some of these old guns, Tommy guns and Al Capone era stuff, is in America. You can buy them, and he basically brought them back to Britain. What him and his friends did is they just stuck them in it, put them in their duffel bags, checked them in at the desk, and then picked them up on the other end. Okay,
God,
yeah.
No big deal. So there's no way to. Security is an oxymoron. The majority of his theater, you can never be 100% safe, okay? And you shouldn't be afraid of peroxide or chapati flour mixed with peroxide as a bomb threat. You know, you can't mix a liquid bomb on a plane. It's impossible. You need a lab.
Yeah.
You know, you can't mix it at home, stick it in a water bottle, and because it might blow up any time from your journey out of the house to, you know, till you get into the airplane, but it's impossible. It's been tried to be replicated many times, even by top university professor at University of Reading, could not do it. But still, the threat and the idea of the threat caused the liquid ban worldwide on the international flights, but there's no basis for that risk assessment. So again, and this is what we're given over and over.
You know, they just want to be able to say, no liquids because someone's mixed a liquid bomb. No one in this country is really questioning what people are doing. They're sleepwalking in this totalitarian police state, and, you know, they're being taken advantage of, you know, majorly by the government, and they just don't get it, you know?
No, they don't. They don't. So, Lee, what's next for you?
Well, what's next is that I'm coming out today. Andy Davis has basically you know, told me, you know, in certain terms, really, in a way, that, you know, obviously, he's probably told G4S. I can't be sure that he hasn't. So now, therefore, I have to come out and say, look, this is who I really am. This is, you know, this is me kind of thing. Connect myself with, you know, Lee Hazeldine. So that's what I'm going to do today. And that's purely for protection, because now I'm actually worried for my safety. Quite honestly, I wasn't the other day, but now I am. Now that that's happened, that, you know, a respected journalist who I've always liked and admired, quite honestly, has basically, made a complete fool of himself. I've got him on recording. No one's going to believe it, but there it is.
Yeah.
It's outrageous. So now I've got to really come out and say, well, okay, I can't go back into G4S because I can't be on private property with these people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you have to go in a way. A lot of times in these situations, the more you go public and the faster you go public, you really protect yourself in that way. And the more you recognize and the more people know your story, it's very hard to cover it up and sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
And in a way that does offer you protection. Politicians do that all the time. That's why they never actually go down for any of their crimes, because they're incredibly public figures. So we use that same methodology when you're trying to out the truth as well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're welcome back here, Lee, and we will definitely be catching up with you all the time. When are you next with Tony?
I think Friday.
You're back on with him Friday. Well, maybe we'll nab you after and get an update for that.
Okay,
and you're going to be back on Alex Jones again probably soon as well, won't you?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's looking that way, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, listen, please keep yourself safe, and I don't, I can't even really say keep calm because I don't know how you're sleeping, but
no, I didn't last night at all. I was so surprised. This is like, someone, okay, I'm not best friends with Andrew Davis, I don't really know him.
Yeah.
As far as, we don't go for drinks, we don't hang out. It's someone on the end of the phone, a journalist I know, right?
Yeah.
A contact. So, to have that happen to, someone, and the thing is, what he didn't ever say was, hello, my name's Andy Davis, I've never met you, what are you doing, right? I rang him back and said, hi Andy, it's Ben, and he went, big pause, more big pause, Ben Fellows, like that. And I went, oh, no, you're recording it. I thought, oh, I'm in deep. I'm in the deep end now. What's coming? And I was just so full of adrenaline. So, no, I'm not staying calm. I'm calming down a little bit now. But really, I'll be much happier when this story, about Andy Davis and what have you breaks. I'll be much happier about that.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Lee. And you, all I can say is keep safe.
Thank you very much, and it was nice to talk to you, Patrick, as well.
Yeah, Lee, just know that you've got millions of people behind you that are supporting you, that are praying for you, and who want the outcome to be good for the public interest. So we applaud you for your efforts, and you have a massive amount of support. You can't see it, but it's there. It's huge.
It is.
Thank you so much. God bless. Thank you ever so much. I'll see you later.
Cheers, Lee. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Your thoughts, Patrick?
Well, it's shocking that in confidentiality that Channel 4 would someone Channel 4 would stab him in the back. In a sense, that's what it looks like. It's a stab in the back. It reminds me of Joe Wilson and Valerie Plame being stabbed in the back by the White House, and also that puts people's lives are at risk here. This is serious conversation. So,
I mean, what's more serious is that all he's worried about is retracting the statement he made about Andy Davis, not about the fact of what Lee's exposing. I mean, Andy
Davis is a journalist and he's a public figure. He should have nothing to hide. What happened to transparency in the media? What happened to transparency in journalism? These people are jokers. They're clowns. If they're operating this way with somebody that they're supposed to have a confidential relationship with and supposed to have a relationship based on trust, they should really be questioning why they're in this career in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go get another job. Go sell timeshares in Mallorca.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Get an honest job. Honestly.
Yeah.
It's shocking. It's and that I've had very limited dealings with mainstream media, and frankly, they never call me to be in any of these documentaries because they probably know they're probably wasting their time. But for someone like him who's doing a real service, really, because the guy who goes undercover and does these types of investigations is a valuable part in breaking stories. Okay, and in a way, guys like Lee have have basically saved lives over the course of history. People like him have saved lives, you know, and have and reduced pain and suffering for people to come after. So, you know, for someone at Channel 4 need to pull their head out of their ass. Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree.
They're overpaid. They're not really doing any work. It's just kind of like milquetoast, lukewarm journalism. It's fantastic. They got big budget, you know, productions and that. But when it comes down to the real information, and that's why the ratings are in the toilet. Okay, CNN's ratings came out the other week, 350,000 in America of 350 million people.
Yeah,
it's pathetic, and people are tuning out because people actually want truth from the media. So that's why Russia Today's ratings are through the roof.
Yeah,
more people are watching Russia Today than CNN.
Absolutely.
Okay? Because they've cul-de-sac themselves into their own ghetto of ignorance and disinformation, giving you nothing, absolutely nothing. BBC give you nothing. They get pundits on. And let's go to Giles for his take on these events. Giles, what do you think about what's been breaking this week? Well, we really can't be sure at this point, and and we really won't be sure in 6 months. And so is that all? That's all we have to say about that.
Exactly.
And move on to the weather. It's a complete crock.
Was that today on the front page of the Daily Mail? It's about Katie Holmes divorcing Tom Cruise.
That's very important. And you're gonna see more of these bullshit stories come out.
Apologies.
In the next couple weeks, and in the run up to the big event, they'll be absolutely blinding us with Jordan's new genetically modified baby or something like that. But there's no end. There's no end. There's no end to it. They'll milk it. They'll milk anything. But this is a real story we're talking about here.
Is. Do you know what's also quite interesting? Muse, who I always thought they were for truth and all their albums, but they've brought out the official song for the Olympics. And do you know what it's called?
What?
Survivor.
Yeah, I know. Doesn't that make you just feel better now?
Doesn't it? leaving the listeners on a positive note. So, last time we spoke, you weren't 100% sure that anything massive was going to go on, and you were going to be staying in London. What are you doing now, Patrick?
Well, I just want to follow this story to its conclusion, right up to the event, and to get as many people to look at this possibility as possible.
Yeah.
And in the hopes that there are key people who are going to hear this information and to be able to know if they're taking part in something that might not be what it appears to be. I had a very good conversation with Ian Crane about this a couple weeks ago. Interviewed him on camera we talked about stage events from A to Z, from a staged alien invasion all the way to a dirty bomb.
Yeah.
And I think guys like Ian are often mischaracterized by members of the media.
Of course.
Just because he's mentioning something like a staged alien invasion, he's not mentioning it out of his own imagination. He's actually taking it from think tank documents.
Yep, exactly.
Going back almost 100 years. Okay, and this is also. This has happened before, but these are all things under the category of staged events.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, don't you remember when we did the show with Brian Garish when you were on, and we were with James, and James mentioned about the Rockefeller documents that he found, and you told him to go and write an article, which he did, and you very kindly put it on InfoWars, and we had so many. I think we almost had 1 million hits to Liberty Tactics site after it went up on InfoWars. But I mean. That was, 4 weeks ago? So we were on air, and James said about the 13,000 to die at the London Olympics. And then I had Ian Crane on here last Monday, and we were discussing probably similar to what you interviewed him about. We were discussing that. And then the Monday night, we get the clip starts going viral over the internet with Lee's interview. Mm-hmm. And it's just all the dots. I mean, it's back in...
And when that article went up, Rockefeller Foundation pulled the documents down from their website.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I find that very, very disturbing.
Yes.
Personally.
It is.
That they would. So, I'm glad we did get that information out on our platform on Infowars.com, and we
Yeah.
need to keep doing that sort of thing. And I will mention the retraction of that document next time I'm doing something on air or doing the next report. But
Yeah.
you know, shady business.
Really shady. Well,
Shady business.
I've kept you for long enough, mister. It's 5 past. It's just after 1. I've had a 2-hour show. A few technical difficulties, as usual, for when I get in here. But anyway, Patrick, good luck. Thank you very much. And I'll keep calling you in for your updates as well, if that's all right, up until the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? Brilliant.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, then. Well, you have a good day. Get back to it. Go and write some articles.
Yeah,
And
we'll do.
Anyone who wants to have a look at Patrick's blog, it's www.21stcenturywire.com.
Yeah, there's not a lot of new material up on that because I've been too busy with Infowars.com.
But your videos on Infowars, they've gone massive, the Infowars ones, haven't they?
Yeah, everything on Infowars, it gets a good uptake because we have got a big audience. And it's a good channel, the Alex Jones channel on YouTube. Lots of material on there. PrisonPlanet.tv is a fantastic resource for $5, which is £3.50 a month. You get access and free downloads in HD to all the investigative reports, all the films, the nightly news, whatever.
Yeah.
And this is a great tool for amateur or people who are in the truth movement who want to do some basic video editing, doing their own reports and releasing them. You can go to and you can download everything without any royalty or copyright restrictions or anything. Any of Alex Jones' material he gives out open source, and you can use that in your video projects. Also, Russia Today does the same thing. RT.com archive, free video archive, fantastic resource. And this is a way that anybody with even basic editing skills can go up online, pull down really high quality material, and then put it into their own presentations to music or with their own commentary. And more people have to do that. Because the still powerful medium, video is a very powerful medium to communicate ideas.
Just before you go there, Alex has set up his own social networking site, Planet Infowars, is it?
Yeah, Planet Infowars.
And that you can even make up your own groups. You can do your own reporting and stories. I've joined up there.
Yeah, it's a good place to hang out with like-minded people, and I encourage everyone to go to Planet Infowars. I haven't set up a profile there yet, but I probably will soon. But it's a great place to share information, and there's a lot of, once you get that concentration of really active people in one place, you get a fantastic exchange of information. You meet people who are like-minded. If you're going to go on holiday in America, you can make lots of friends in the States who are like-minded and you hang out with them. It's like what Facebook should be.
Yeah.
to people who have a high level of
without being spied on by the government.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to be spied on by us. We don't have the manpower.
No. Well, listen, the next task for you is I want to interview Alex Jones. So sort that one out for me, please.
Okay, well, we'll try. I can't even interview him. It's not easy. So.
No, of course not.
But I think if you want something to happen, eventually it's going to happen.
Exactly. Well, Patrick, thanks so much for spending a couple of hours with us today. And no doubt we'll have you back on in the next week or two.
Great to be with you, Lou.
All right, then. See you later.
Take care.
Cheers, hon. Bye. Oh, I'm exhausted after this show. It's been mental. I get in here trying to prepare at sort of 20 to 10 I got here. I can't connect to the server. We stayed on air, which is fantastic, but usually I connect my computer up so we can have the computer sorted for the music, the main computer in the office, and then I can play out my Skype and anything I want on my computer. So I couldn't check anything online. I've had to do it all off the one studio computer, hence there's been a bit of background noises and everything else because I haven't been able to fade things out, hence why the ringing was going on over Skype. But we got there. We were late starting, but we got through it, and I think it was a great show. Thank you to Chris. It was his day off today, and because of the technical issues, he rushed in to sort of like get everything sorted for me so we could do this show. Mike at the UK column, thank you for coming on, doing that little bit on the BBC, and Marcus Agius. Thomas Sheridan, fantastic as always on the minds of the psychopaths and what's going on in government with there. And then, of course, we've got Lee Hazeldine, who's putting everything on the line just to get this information out, just to warn people. Let's pray it's not. Let's pray it's all, it all amounts to nothing and it was them. It's the other side making this story come out and making it people like myself and Patrick and everyone else who's sort of like concerned about this, like fools. Let's pray. Yes, pray it is. Let's pray it's that. And the Olympics is going to just come and go nice and smoothly. But just bear in mind, if you're in London, just to stay a little bit vigilant as to what's going on. I'm not going to be in London. Ian Crane's not going to be in London. And I keep saying to Patrick, he needs to come down to Devon and he can come and co-host this show with me for those 2 weeks. Just be vigilant, really. Next week, I've finally got the author William Engdahl who wrote Seeds of Destruction and The Gods of Money. So he's going to be in over Skype with me next week. Hopefully there aren't going to be many technical issues. James and Jenny, I will see you later in the week, guys. And all the listeners, and thank you, Sandout, for having me. Speak to you next week.
But they're also saying about these, casket lining things, and I said, what's casket lining?
Yeah, how many casket, and has anybody actually seen these casket linings, Lee?
I don't know. I'm just going on what the guy said. I don't know whether they're stored in a warehouse somewhere, whether they're stored in a shipyard, wherever. I haven't seen them personally. I'm just reporting basically what he said, and he said there were 200,000 of them. And half of me thinks, you know what, that's probably quite sensible, because if a major terrorist attack happened, at the Olympics, there's 80,000 people, in there anyway, and then people in the Olympic Park. This could all just be very precautionary.
Yeah.
Then the other half of me says, what are you planning? Why do we need those?
Yeah.
If they said we've got 200,000 paramedics, I'd have been like, okay, that's fine.
There was also comments about foreign troops being drawn in, not as well as I can't remember. Is it 30,000 British troops have been brought in?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, everybody, I think, basically. All leave has been cancelled, as far as I can tell, from what my sources say. An army major, who's a doctor at Woolwich Barracks, basically, this was back in, so before I started, this was back in sort of February, maybe, March, said to me, he was concerned that, there was 100,000 troops coming through Woolwich. And I said, why? And he said, there were German, there were American troops all for the Olympics, and they were going to be stationed in and around bases around London. And this was 100,000 people, and he seemed to think it was kind of UN troops, But I mean, he couldn't be specific in that, but he has to give them a medical, and then they get, assigned to wherever base they then move on to. But they're being Chinooks in, helicopters in, under the cover of darkness. There's 2 Chinook flights per night going over Greenwich. A friend of mine told me this, and he said they're coming in by Chinook as well, this army major. So I went to Greenwich, and sure enough, they're coming in by Chinook, after midnight, which to me is quite sinister, quite frankly.
Absolutely. Now, going to the uniforms, you haven't got your uniforms yet.
It's basically, I did the training since April. I've only officially had one paycheck, which is a training paycheck, I think £45. So that's all I've had so far. I haven't officially started. I haven't officially signed a contract with them or anything. They haven't checked my references of my application, my personal references or my work references. So, so officially, I suppose, I've just finished the training and I'm just about to start with G4S, really. But as yet, I mean, they're so bad with their paperwork and what have you, that I haven't signed a contract. I mean, I think I have to. I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Right, okay. So you went for your interview. I know we've had a chat the last couple of days, but you went for your interview, and how did the interview pan out, and what was involved with regards to the interview, Lee?
Okay, well, the interview was really quite silly in a way, because I sat down with this very nice woman, very professional, and she basically had 3 cups, which were, one was lemonade, one was orange juice, and one was nothing. And she said, can you tell the difference by smelling them? And so I said that, I said, that's orange juice, that's lemonade, and that's nothing. And she went, very good. And that was kind of it. And then they did another one where it was kind of numbers, where they showed you like a 1, a 3, and then a squiggle. And if you said the squiggle was a number, obviously you'd fail. But, you say, actually, that's 1, that's 3, and that's a squiggle. So, and that was it, really. That was the test. That's all I had to do. They gave me a sight test, and basically, I was off. That was my interview process done.
And I know, again, yesterday we were talking, but we said about the Criminal Records Bureau's checks that most people have to undertake. Even just if you want to go and drive a taxi, you have to have a Criminal Records Bureau check.
Yeah.
Did you get a check done? Did you get the paperwork to fill in?
I don't think so. I think I'd remember. I have an SIA license, so I have a criminal records check done for that. But the thing is, that was, 3 years ago, when I first got it for an assignment that I was working on about door supervisors.
Right.
So, really, I could have committed a crime in between, because I haven't renewed the license as yet. It's coming up if I need to renew it. So, they haven't sent me the paperwork. I haven't done a criminal records check that I can remember, and I'm sure I would have, it's all a bit sort of out there. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm so sort of hurried this morning is because I'm being bullied by Channel 4 at the moment to retract what I've said about one of their correspondents. So I'm a little bit on edge.
Yeah, of course you are. I totally understand. Well, I'll kind of whiz my questions through just to give people who haven't heard of you before, Lee. I just want to give them a little bit of an insight on how you got this job. So then you went on a training course, which was conducted by another private firm.
Yeah, it's called Contemporary International.
Okay.
Again, they're a private company. They're an events management company, I think, as far as I can tell. And again, they have all ex-soldiers, training you. And the training consisted of PowerPoint presentations that were very, very basic. And when I say basic, I mean one of the things that sticks in my mind was that one of the PowerPoints was, what does the security officer do the night before his shift? And, the answer is, I have something to eat, go to bed early, iron your uniform. I mean, that's how... And then we sat through that for basically, I did 2 days, I had a break, and then they emailed me back, I think, a month later, or maybe a little bit longer, about 6 weeks, maybe. And I had another 2 days. So 4 days of training, 3 days of PowerPoint presentations, and 1 day was basically, half a day of an assessment, which was ridiculous. I mean, I purposefully searched someone wrong, and the guy said, yeah, that's fine, that's good. I saw them, one guy who couldn't speak English, who didn't really know what he was doing, trying to search a bag. He just stood there holding the bag, and the trainer said, it's all right, mate, I know what you mean. And I said, well, I don't know what he means. Can you explain it?
Yeah.
He's supposed to be a security officer, and he was like, the trainer was just like, don't talk about it, forget it. None of your business kind of thing,
So now about the metal detector scanners things, people. Right, I'm hoping I've got Lee and Patrick here. Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Hi, Patrick, are you there? Oh no, we haven't got Patrick. I'm going to try and add Patrick back onto this call. How you doing, Lee?
Yes, I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. The phone's going to ring now, so I'm going to add Patrick Henningsen in from InfoWars. But for the people who aren't aware of you and what's been going on, could you give the listeners a little bit about your background, please?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm a filmmaker. I'm an investigative journalist. Obviously, I'm using a pseudonym for what I'm doing now. And I've been basically working as a freelance investigative journalist. So, I worked on the Cook Report for a little time. I've worked with other people, other journalists, and, doing stories and what have you. We did Cash for Questions, which was a big story back in the 90s, about lobbying and big government and all that kind of thing, and bribery and corruption. So, I'm very much into that kind of thing, and I decided to go undercover at G4S. In their run-up to the Olympics to see what their training program was going to be like and see what it was like working for them. Because I've heard some horror stories. And, you've got to check these things out for yourself. You can't just take other people's word for it.
No.
So I signed up and became a security officer with G4S.
Right, fantastic. Patrick, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Lee, can you hear Patrick?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Brilliant.
Hi, Patrick.
Hello, Lee.
Right, I'm just getting Lee just to give a little bit about his background. I want to start before I before you jump in, Patrick, about talking about how he got the job and what he's been doing on the training, and then it will be over to you, Patrick. I know you've got quite a few questions you want to ask Lee yourself.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So Lee, how long have you been working now for G4S?
I think
They're going to be having to go. I mean, there's thousands upon thousands of people due to go through those gates on the opening day, and for all the events for the next fortnight. What can you tell us about the scanners?
Well, the scanners are cheap. They're rapid scan metal detectors, and I think half the problem with G4S is that they've got so many people to get through. It's just about numbers for them, just training at the numbers, right? And so they've gone cheap on everything, really. They've gone cheap on security officers, and they've gone cheap on equipment. This rapid scan metal detector, I was asked to take a knife through it. The knife was in my back pocket. I walked through the metal detector, and it didn't go off. So the trainer said, did it go off? And I said, no, it didn't. He goes, okay, have some keys. So I had some keys, and I went through the metal detectors, and I think, and he said, to go, I said, no. So he said, here's an iPhone, right? So I went through with his phone, because I don't have a mobile phone, and then the metal detector went off. So you can imagine how much metal you actually have to have on you for these things to work. And, these are supposed to be metal detectors. Their basic function is to detect metal. The one metal detector outside of Heaven nightclub in London is much better than the ones they've got for the Olympics. I'm not saying this to sort of, pick on G4S or anything like that. It is a fact that these metal detectors aren't up to scratch. They said to us, when I said, look, how many people have we got to search? They said, don't worry about searching people, because in peak times we're going to have the metal detectors off anyway, so they won't go off. So we've got to get 350 people through an hour. That's what they told us.
So you also mentioned that the people doing the training made some comment about the police not having any power over the G4S.
Yeah, they're quite blatant about that. They were like, well, the police have got nothing to do, they're going to be bored, the police, one of the comments was, we've got more power than the police, right? That's basically what they think, whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. This is what they think, this is what they said. They were also saying, they were bigging their operation up, of course.